Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the driveway. Right now is probably one of the most pivotal and chaotic parts of my life, so I figured why not make a video about it. There's gonna be a lot going on, so there's timestamps if you want to jump around. Roll the intro. I'm probably going to do a follow-up video to this one where I answer questions that you have in the comments. So if you have any questions, feel free to leave them down below and include a timestamp so I know what part of the video you're talking about if relevant. But first, I'm going to start with the thing that the most people have been wondering about, which is this is about a year since I started walking for my friend Tyler Hoover. Did I say walking or working? I meant working. So it's been a year with Tyler and still going strong, and a lot of people, I've seen comments and people assuming things and other people with questions, so I thought I'd try to address some of that. First of all, no, I do not have much to do with the actual mainline Hoovie's Garage channel. Tyler really likes the way that channel feels. It's very personal to him, which is very understandable and makes a lot of sense. He wants to keep the vibe of it the same. I do a lot of beauty shots for his new car intros and some drone footage or whatever else he might need, but for the most part, he films and edits Hoovie's Garage all on his own. A lot of people ask me what I do for him, and the answer to that is kind of whatever he needs. Obviously, Good Morning YouTube, now April's Garage, is something that I'm heavily involved with. I do all the filming, editing, and whatnot for that, procuring equipment, all that sort of thing. Of course, now with the rebrand, some things might be changing there. The Saturday specials, the car reviews, Tyler also handles those because they have the same vibe as Hoovie's Garage videos, and so that kind of keeps things a little bit congruous between the two channels. But a lot of the work I do for Tyler is just kind of logistics stuff, interfacing with shippers if he's not in town or not available, or shuffling cars here or there, or taking care of some dealership paperwork, or, you know, stuff like that. Watch the house while he's gone, you know. Whatever happens to need done that I can help with. A lot of it is just being sort of on call and trustworthy and knowledgeable about a lot of different things. I can see how that'd be helpful. I wish I had someone like that. And something that's been nice about all this is it's let me slow down with my own channel. It turns out that I've actually somehow accidentally ended up at a roughly 1 to 2 video a month cadence, which I think is a pretty good spot because the videos are allowed to be more complete, less of a vlog of what I did this day and more of a here's a complete beginning to end story with a distinct beginning and an end instead of continuing through multiple videos. And I'm a lot prouder of the videos that I've been able to make in this time. They all feel a lot more like what my vision was for the kind of content that I wished I could make, especially some of the longer ones. I absolutely love the video where we went and got the i3. I thought that one was fantastic, though weirdly, one of the ones that I put the least amount of effort in, which was my 2.5 Swap Miata video, absolutely went gangbusters. I have no idea why. I personally didn't love that video, but I guess it's more about the topic than it is anything else. Once people click and start watching, they tend to keep watching. And speaking of getting new cars, something that I saw a lot in the comments where I got my M2 here is people who thought that I bought this because of the money I'm making from Tyler, which actually is not true. I bought this, I could have afforded this pretty much at any time. I just sold a bunch of cars and other things in order to afford this car. I figured that if I condensed a whole bunch of the garbage that I had, I could buy one good car, which is something people have been telling me for a long time, but usually the good car they mention is a Camry. So if I didn't spend my money buying the M2, what did I spend it on? My house. This has been a common refrain throughout my videos for a long time is, oh my gosh, your house is a mess, your house looks like crap, your house is overgrown. Well, this is for you and also for me. Yes, my house has been kind of crap. I bought it at the right time, about like 2018, 2019, when the market was the lowest for a really, really low amount. So I had a lot of equity to work with. So I have been pouring money into fixing things up here. Earlier this year, when my girlfriend decided to work towards moving in with me, I decided that I wanted the house to be ready for her, you know, less crap, I suppose. And so I met with the contractor and we put together a plan, and then that plan completely fell apart due to just all kinds of crazy stuff happening in July. So they didn't get work started until after she was already moved in. So that's been real fun because that means that we've been having to work around both of our stuff being in the house instead of just my stuff being in the house. It's been a real party. Originally, I just wanted the contractor to take care of some flooring. The house had carpet when I got it, and that carpet was absolutely disgusting. And I knew that there would be some amount of hardwood floors underneath it. So I pulled up the carpet and found hardwood in varying conditions of okay underneath it. So I wanted the hardwood restored, and the areas where it wasn't restorable, I wanted new flooring put in. So I called a contractor to have him look into doing the flooring and some trimming, and then I asked him about my siding. This house had cedar siding when I got it, and I had suspicions that it was installed improperly and was going to cause issues, and he confirmed those suspicions. The cedar siding was just installed on top of the old siding that was originally on the house. This house was built in the mid-early 50s, I think. And water was getting in behind it because there was a lip at the top where it actually stuck out even beyond the shingles of the roof. And water was getting behind it, rotting it out. And that's why it was falling off the house, because the substrate it was nailed into was rotting away, which was the shingles. So, whole house has gotten stripped. Fortunately, there has been minimal surprises. The only real surprise, which isn't that surprising when you think about it, is that the garage over here, which was added on, had no sheathing or anything. The siding was just nailed straight onto studs. So that was sheathed with chipboard, and then the whole house has been wrapped. There hasn't really been any structural rotting or anything like that. The slab that the kitchen is on has sunk a tiny bit, probably due to all the vegetation that you saw back here in previous videos. So, oops. But the garage is sheathed and wrapped. Trim is all happening. Got a new door here on the garage, so that's nice. I think, nope, it's locked. Cool. The old one literally was just one of those little slide lock things. Actually, the door's over here. It was this garbage door, and there was basically nothing holding it shut. It was absolutely terrible. So, new trim, new siding, door frames are getting done. I'll probably replace the exterior lighting with something a little more appropriate. One big upgrade I was super stoked about that wasn't even in the plan originally, there was all kinds of scope creep, was new sliding rear door with a, what's it called? Screen. My old sliding door was trash, single pane, wasn't, it didn't slide very well. So that's all been really nice. On the inside, we have got new kitchen flooring, had the wood floors refinished, and I absolutely love how the wood floors turned out. I got a new dishwasher, finally. First time in my life I've actually had a dishwasher that functions properly. And then we're DIYing, repainting the cabinets, and eventually repainting the walls. So very, very excited about that. I am going to keep the big front porch, but I'm gonna DIY some repairs to that. It's sinking in areas. It was a DIY thing. Back in, my neighbor says, the 70s, they put this porch on here, and all the supports are just into poured concrete, so they're rotting out. It's sinking here. It was all nailed in pretty poorly. The nails are pulling out, so there's going to be some boards replaced. I'm going to put actual footings underneath it eventually. And once this round of things are done, there's going to be another round of repairs and stuff probably next year. Obviously, everyone's commenting on the fascia of the shop. It looks worse than it is. People are always talking about, oh, your header board's rotting. The header board is actually a dual layer header board, and only the outer part of that has some superficial sort of rotting going on. I've poked that thing with a screwdriver 10 ways from Sunday. It is solid enough. It's mostly just this compressed MDF type material that they used for the fascia is not a material you should use for a fascia, and so it's just falling apart and rotting off because it got wet, which things tend to do when they're outside. Eventually also a new front garage door, but those are very expensive. Also expensive was, after I committed to this, before any work had even started, my sewer completely went out. The cast iron in my basement foundation rusted apart and fell into itself and collapsed a bit and completely clogged up the sewer. They had to chisel out my foundation and dig up the sewer pipes and run some new stuff. And then the part that hasn't been fixed yet is the sewer is actually shifting and becoming misaligned out there by the road. And for those who don't know, you're responsible for the sewer lines all the way to the main. That includes the parts under the road. So in order to fix that would require tearing up the road and paying for it to be repoured, or doing a liner through the entire thing. Probably going to go the liner route. I think that's going to be about $6,000 to $8,000, so that'll happen probably this winter. I'm hoping to do that in December before things get cold, so there's no like frost heave or anything, though we don't really have a whole lot of issues with that here in Kansas. But fun things, old home ownership. Still, I'd rather be doing this than renting, because I get to make this space my own and I get to have some equity in it and feel like my money is going somewhere, even if I end up spending the same amount as I would have renting. Even though she's been a model tenant, my girlfriend still had all kinds of issues with her landlord moving out of her apartment, and there's like 3 companies, I think, that have a triopoly on every single apartment complex in the Wichita area. It's all just so terrible. I want absolutely nothing to do with it. So, cars that are no longer here. The Corvette I sold to a friend, though I have a video coming out on it whenever I get around to editing it. I actually filmed it, I think in February, but my friend has been loving it. It's been his daily driver. Interestingly, he has a new Supra and an FRS, previous gen FRS, but he prefers dailying the Corvette, and it is a very good cruiser, very good daily. But I had the M5, and it was also fast, but more my thing. However, I also sold the M5. I ended up wholesaling it to a dealer friend who drove it for a while, went, yeah, I get it, these are really good. And then also went, yeah, okay, I don't need to own this for much longer. So then he wholesaled it for exactly what he bought it from me from. It got bought by us in the Northeast, and then it's just kind of gone through the dealer wholesale auction circuit like several times. I don't know what happened to it. It's kind of a shame, but that car was in a really weird spot where in order to make it perfect, it would have cost as much as buying a decent one or a really good one, honestly, now that prices are falling, which is what hurt me, is right when I decided to sell everything, prices absolutely went through the floor. But it wasn't quite cheap enough to be like an impulse purchase, so that thing existed in a really weird spot. The E46, obviously, traded for the E30 to a friend of mine. He still has it. He already wrecked it once and then fixed it, and is continuing to daily drive it. He's trying to work it up to that 300,000 mile mark. I'll do a follow-up video if and when he gets there, but he doesn't do a whole lot of road trips, so it'll probably take a while, but that car is still good, still reliable. Though it did need, what did it need? It needed ball joints recently. And if you remember, I did the ball joints 40,000 miles ago, 60,000 miles, whenever I got it. Shortly after I did ball joints, they were already bad, which kind of unfortunate because I got OEM stuff, and the OEM stuff, you know, lasts 80 to 120,000 miles typically. So that was weird. The 2.5 swap Miata, which I mentioned, that sold. It went to an autocrosser up in Kansas City. Interestingly, he was an engineer who actually worked on the Duratec engine family, which was really cool. He'd also worked on the V12s and the Aston Martins. So real neat talking to him. I hope he's enjoying that car. And then I also sold my yellow Ducati. That went to a fellow in Oklahoma who's actually doing a frame-off restoration for it. I think he got a pretty good deal on that bike. I got a good deal on that bike. Turned out that the reason that it had stopped running was it had completely shattered one of the piston rings in the front jug. Ringland was fine, cylinder bore was fine, but the ring just decided to stop existing. I have no idea, and that guy had tons of motorcycle experience. He couldn't explain it either, so real Jake problem there. So moving on to an update of the cars I do have, we have the E30. Since the last video with this thing, it's received an E36 318 Ti steering rack, which has helped immensely. We've also got some interior parts here. Fixed this under tray that goes under here, and got some, what are they called? Cup holders. Look at that, cup holders in an E30, how amazing. Next up for this is probably going to be tires. I found, it turns out you can get RT660s for the factory wheels for this car, which I still have sitting over there. So I'm going to get some RT660s for this probably next spring, and I hope I'll be able to get some track time with this car. I also would like to fix some of the rust that it has, especially the battery box area and that sort of thing, and maybe do a DIY respray. It'd be really cool to paint it to match the M2. Over here, my girlfriend's Lincoln MKX. I don't really like this car all that much. It replaced her Ford Escape, which was a 05, I think, first generation Ford Escape, 3-liter V6 automatic front wheel drive. good engine, good power delivery, pretty enjoyable. This has the 3.5 Cyclone, and I just don't like it that much. She's been daily driving the i3 in the meantime. We have the Insight. I haven't really done anything to this since you last saw it. Actually, no, yesterday I did a bunch of stuff. I checked the plugs. I swapped in a bunch of things from my wrecked car again, the plugs, coils. I took a look at the fuel injectors. I think I have a bad fuel injector on cylinder 1. That plug was a lot richer looking than the others. And then I cleaned out the EGR, which wasn't actually that dirty. So still not entirely sure. Well, I guess I do know why it was getting such bad fuel economy. It probably has an injector that needs cleaned. So I've got 9 injectors sitting around. I'm gonna gather them all up and get them flow balanced and tested sometime, and we'll see if that helps. The M2, still great, still an M2. When I got this, it had a JB4 from Berger Motorsports, which is a piggyback ECU. Since then, I have disabled that. That was bringing it up to about M2 CS levels of power. However, I didn't like the jank of having a piggyback ECU, so I paid a guy from the UK $300. He remoted into my laptop and set up a VPN between the car's DME and his computer, because these things just talk over Ethernet like an actual computer. And he flashed the full suite of M2 CS software on here. I'm talking the engine, traction control, steering, differential, all of it, just like a CS. The throttle response is so much better. It's not as twitchy as it was before. The traction control lets you play, have a little bit more fun, and it makes the M2 CS power, so 450 horsepower. This thing's been great. I haven't really been dailying it. I'd prefer for it to be in the garage, but the garage is full of home renovation stuff, so dang it. Oh my gosh. John Ross in the most baller vehicle to ever exist.
Horsepower, baby.
Oh man, about time you finally got a good car.
Woo, that's double the power of that Insight.
Fair. And we're back. I think I finished talking about the M2. Now the i3, which is actually over here running a self-test of the battery, which it failed. This old girl needs a battery, but it's been a great daily driver. The range is severely diminished. As you can see, even fully charged, it's only saying 47 miles. Despite the diminished range, I mean, this thing still does what I need it to. I did add in, I got this thing at a garage sale, an original Infinity base link, the 10-inch one. I love it. It had the bad resistors in it when I got it, so I had to pull it apart, solder new resistors to the amp. That thing's great. Did a little bit of fiddling around and got the sound system in this thing sounding really, really good. I need to put in this Scosche quick disconnect, so that'll go right here, and it'll be an insulated connection, so I can quickly unplug and remove this and have all this glorious trunk space back. I think I've hit 5,000 miles on this car now since I got it, and I haven't put gas in it in 2,500 of those. I actually took the fuel tank out of the frunk. This thing has home link. I should probably program it one of these days. I programmed all of Hoover's home links. I should, maybe do my own at some point. Back here, I still have the E92. That's going to go away as soon as I'm done with it, but I haven't really been working on it. I still need to swap the seats in and the 3-stage intake manifold. It's just, I haven't been able to find the time. The Honda's still over here, and my other Honda, which I have not done a video about yet, this is a 1995 Honda Magna. I inherited this from my late uncle. It had been sitting for 3 years. One of the reasons there isn't a video on it is because I really didn't do anything. I just dropped it off at a shop with a blank check and said, make it correct. So all the fluids, tires, filters, plugs, wires, flush all the coolant, oil, brake fluid, brake pads, gosh, what else? Clean, sink, rebuild the carbs, air filter, a whole bunch of stuff. But this thing rides like brand new. It's great. I added saddlebags, sissy bar, and a windshield. Really, really hard to find windshields that fit these. Replaced the levers. Levers were bad. Mirrors were broke. But now it's in pretty good shape. Original exhaust sounds really good. Sounds like a sport bike, but isn't. Over there we've got the Aprilia Tuono. It's been pretty reliable, except my carpuride thing that I put on a while ago. I need to take this off. It killed my battery. R.I.P. little buddy. I don't think it's going to come back. I put it on the battery tender, but I think she's dead. Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. It might have come back. Who knows? I'll need to put a few more cycles through it. I don't like this Sargent seat, though. I need to talk to someone about getting a stock seat. This, I got rid of all my e-bikes and bought this. This is a Talaria Triple X. I put off-road tires on it. That one that came with off-road tires was out of stock, so I got the one with the Supermoto tires, put off-road tires on it, a non-X-ring or non-O-ring chain, new pegs, new bars, new seat. This thing's amazing. I wanted something about like the size of CRF 110 or something like that. You know, this is the same power and similar size and whatnot, but a lot lighter, so I can actually get this thing into my truck on my own, which is wonderful. Yeah, once the house is done, going through here and reorganize. Once the house is done and the E92 is gone, this will be for sale. If you want it, make an offer. See my previous videos for all of the stuff that's done to this thing. I'm going to reorganize the shop once this is gone. I have some pretty decent ideas for how to make this space a lot more usable. I did get a welder recently. It's over there. It's actual gas MIG welder. Still, you know, Harbor Freight tier, but I've been able to lay down way, way better welds than I could previously, which has been nice. Moving on outside, that's where the Datsun sat for the longest time. I'm still fighting with plants growing up around here. I did buy a Milwaukee, Milwaukee weed eater and the brush trimmer attachment. The wrecked inside is still in there. I need to get a hold of the company to get replacements for this, all of this. Because, yeah, 2 winters and a whole bunch of wind hasn't been kind to it. Boat, haven't made a video on this. This thing's pretty well trashed. But I got it for the engine here because it ran, but now it doesn't run. It's got 0 compression in one of the cylinders. I'm hoping it's just a head gasket, but when I went to do the compression test, I hooked the battery up backwards because none of the wires are labeled, and I didn't notice that it was hooked up backwards until I saw the starter motor spinning in the wrong direction. Now it has weak spark, and yeah, it won't even run on 3 cylinders like it did before. So I kind of lost all motivation after that happened, because now not only do I have the compression issue to figure out, and now I have to figure out what on earth I broke by hooking it up backwards. Extremely frustrating. So yeah, kind of lost me with that. The truck has been pretty great. I actually took it off-roading finally. Blew up ignition module, replaced the Grimes replaced the ignition module. Have all the stuff to put a new AC compressor in here, because this AC compressor is completely shot, and then I'm going to charge the AC with propane. But other than that, it's just been a good little truck. The engine it's just tired. The engine's really tired. It uses a lot of oil, and I'm not quite sure what I'm gonna do. I might just build another 2.3 with some light go-fast parts, like a cam, bump the compression, 5.3-inch rods, hypereutatic pistons, that sort of thing, and run it on a standalone. Just have kind of a slightly more updated, but still stock-ish 2.3, something that won't require a new transmission, doesn't require a swap. If I did do a swap, it would be a 302 using the manual transmission out of a 97 4x4 F-150, because those manual transmissions just bolt right in and bolt right up to the 5.0, and the 5.0 fits really nice in the engine bay because, well, the Explorer had the same engine bay and it had a 5.0 in it. Every other engine swap is stupid, yes, even that one, because they all require a different transmission and an adapter, or they require an ungodly amount of work. Haven't quite decided yet. And then the 57, sitting here getting dusty. Lots has happened to this. I haven't made a second video yet. As you can see, it's got new tires. I've got a whole bunch of parts in the back. I don't even remember what all I did in the last video with this and what all I have in the upcoming video, but a whole bunch of parts. Overall, it drives pretty good. I did have to replace the fuel tank, which was a pain, and it's still not right. They revised the design for the aftermarket fuel tanks, even though It had an aftermarket one in it, replaced it with another aftermarket one that turned out to actually be the same part number, and the new one is a lot worse, and I'm not thrilled with it. Parts are just kind of crap these days. You just can't get good stuff, especially when it's low volume stuff like this. So that's mildly annoying. The goal is to get this thing good enough to take a road trip along Route 66 eventually. We will see. It also needs leaf springs, and that's another really big thing. So I'm not sure. My zest for this is kind of worn down a little bit. I've got all the parts to fix the AC in it. I did fix the AC, and then the AC unfixed itself, and so now I'm going to make new lines for it. What else? Oh, that's right. It's leaking an unholy amount of oil, and the fuel tank situation have kind of just put me off of driving it at all. So it's been sitting here for a while. I need to come out and start it and make sure that everything is still good. Moving on to the thing in the thumbnail that probably got a lot of people to click on this. I'm going to sit in the i3 because this is probably going to be long. This video is already really long. I wanted to do this with like minimal cuts, but my gosh, it's going to be a lengthy boy. Sit down and talk about this for a minute just because it's sort of a thing. So this is going to get a little personal. I was homeschooled for most of my life, which meant that I wasn't exposed to too many education professionals or health professionals, which meant that despite being a poster child for ADHD, I was never diagnosed with such. And it was, common refrains like, oh, he'd do so good in school if he could apply himself. Let's see, a lot of other things like difficulty understanding speech or focusing on speech, extreme anxiety, not like the John Mulaney, I sometimes get nervous on airplanes bit, but like actual crushing anxiety that manifests itself in two different ways. One of them is the constant droning anxiety, which manifests itself as sort of a fear that everything that I've accomplished, everything that I have in the world will somehow disappear or get taken away because of something that I'm forgetting. That is a constant that never goes away. I always feel like I forgot something and the consequences are going to be literally life-changing. The other way that manifests itself is the more like extreme scared of heights sort of thing. Certain anxiety-inducing situations will just cause a complete freeze up, like just complete cognitive, just frozen, complete shutdown. And getting out of that will usually take 15 to 20 minutes of concentrated effort. So it's not just like, oh, I get slightly nervous when I have a big test coming up. Like there is a whole nother level of anxiety that a lot of people can't fathom, and attempts to put it into perspective don't really capture how it is. Also, executive dysfunction, which again sounds a lot like something that a lot of people deal with, like, oh, I just don't want to do anything today, or oh, that topic sounds distasteful or doesn't appeal to me, I don't want to do it. Extreme executive dysfunction, I can have something to do, be very aware of the consequences of not doing it, and even it be something that I want to do, and I cannot make myself do it. Even things I enjoy, even hobbies that I like, if the executive dysfunction is bad, they will not happen. I cannot force myself to do it. Social skill issues. I've always had difficulty saying the right thing to people, or difficulty in social, knowing what to say, how to act. A lot of that just comes from not being socialized a lot as a kid, but other parts of that are due to autism spectrum disorder. I frequently forget to eat or drink. For years now, I rarely have more than one meal a day just because I forget, and I'm almost always on the verge of dehydration. I found ways to work around that and get myself to actually eat and drink, but that's just an example of something that, like, hunger doesn't work the same way. It's not until I am damn near fainting that I realize, oh wait, I haven't, I'll sit here and go like, oh, I haven't eaten in over 24 hours. Sort of thing. These are all pretty big flags of ADHD and or autism spectrum disorder that just never really went diagnosed. And those all kind of push me towards, oh, I could probably afford to see a professional now, I should go do that. And then one of my friends got professionally diagnosed, and he went, hey, I see a lot of the same of this in you. You should probably go get checked out as well. And a lot of people say that, like, it seems like everyone has autism now, but I probably would have gone my whole life without knowing it if it weren't for friends, media, etc., just kind of making it more acceptable and making the link between symptom and cause a little more apparent. There's memes on the internet that you'll see. They're like, my least favorite part of ADHD is XYZ, or my least favorite part of being autistic is XYZ, and you read that and go, wait, I experienced that. Is that not normal? And then you can end up going down this rabbit hole. In my case, the whole reason for wanting to know was because of the ADHD itself. Now that ADHD interacts with other disorders, so I wanted to get tested for everything to figure out how to best deal with it, because the ADHD was so bad that it impacted my ability to get work done, just could not focus or anything. I've tried a lot of non-medication coping mechanisms and workarounds, and those have helped more with my daily life, like with the eating or like doing chores, but work specifically was incredibly difficult because like video editing in particular is kind of immune to all of these other task grouping and gamification and stuff, or breaking things down to smaller parts. None of that really works with video editing, so I just needed to find a way to minimize the ADHD so I could get things done. Now, like I said, could afford to do this now because this was a $2,000 endeavor just for the initial diagnosis, and it is a bear. It is a big thing. There's proctored exams, lots of questionnaires, lots of mental challenges across multiple sessions, and then probably 6 hours of labor on the back end of the therapist putting it all together. So it's an expensive endeavor, and it took a long time. There's a lot of stuff to it, and my hopes were that we could figure out a remediation plan, identify what the actual worst pain points were, and how to approach them. And we're still not. This was 3 or 4 months ago, I think, and two or 3 months ago, and we still haven't figured it out because there are so many different ways to attack this and so many ways that different disorders interact with each other. Basically what the test ended up saying, and there was like an IQ test and all kinds of stuff that tested for a whole bunch of disorders, not necessarily just the ones that I thought I might have, but it ended up coming up with the ADHD inattentive type severe, autism spectrum disorder, severe anxiety, minor depression, and trauma symptoms. Words are hard. Some of those came as a little bit of a surprise. Others didn't. But I did gain a lot of clarity on my past through this and my behavior in the past, difficulties I had with relationships, etc. Stuff like my sensory issues from the past. When I was a kid, as young as I can remember, I hated collared shirts. I hated long sleeve shirts. I hate long socks, stuff like that. I cannot stand anyone touching my neck. Shaving sucks. And those are fairly severe examples of autistic sensory issues. Of course, I've got the special interests. There's the joke of, you got train autism. Yes, I liked trains. Very original joke. You can move on now. Stimming habits, very common. Dissociating, I have a lot of issues with dissociating. That's a problem when talking to people. And then, of course, the extremely obvious ADHD symptoms throughout my life, procrastination, anxiety, inability to concentrate, etc. As far as medication goes, stimulants don't work for me. They're usually the easy way out with ADHD. Neurodivergent people often have very flip-flopped reactions to things compared to normal people, especially various substances. Currently trying Strattera, and even as a non-stimulant, I'm experiencing side effects that aren't even documented. It's giving me food poisoning type symptoms, and that's not even a thing that's supposed to happen. So we've doubled the dosage of that twice, and there's no positive side effects and just a bunch of negative ones. And hopefully I find something that works, because so far I haven't. And even today the sun is setting, and it took me this long to get around to making this video. So some interesting things about being on the autism spectrum are things that it makes you better at. My bouncing around and always seeking novel and interesting challenges made me extremely good at IT-related things and diagnostic type challenges, just because it was something new to wrap my mind around, and I just thrived with that, which is very typical of the ADHD and autistic neurotype. I think they actually call it ADHD when it's both of them. But like diagnosing cars, diagnosing computers, all kind of the same mindset, all very, very well suited to this neurotype because you're applying concepts and strategies in new ways. And it feels a bit like a challenge, a bit like a puzzle. One of the things that was given to me during the proctored tests were some like simple puzzles. And that was where I excelled, was not math questions or anything like that, or short-term memory challenges, but here are some shapes. Like it was like a puzzle. It literally just a puzzle. Like, here's a puzzle, put it together. And that was actually like really engaging. I really got into that. Weirdly, I don't actually like putting together actual puzzles because, I don't know, they just get tedious after the first three similar looking shapes. Unfortunately, this means, you know, a lot of jobs just don't work for me, especially if they involve lots of social situations. Interestingly, my particular IT job did involve lots of social interaction, and I did okay with that. I'm not sure why that is, or maybe I was terrible at it and nobody said anything and I didn't realize it. That's also a possibility. So like I mentioned, it was $2,000 to get this done, and my health insurance did not cover it. Some health insurance, mine is particularly terrible. Cannot wait to get out of it and go to something else this next re-enrollment season. Self-diagnosis is an option. Like I said, memes were one of the things that clued me in that there might actually be a clinical reason that I struggle so much. You know, I look at other people who don't have these sorts of issues, and it just seems like an absolute superpower that they don't have these struggles with just getting seemingly everyday tasks or just work done. TikTok and the internet in general has a ton of communities and resources for this sort of thing, but you do run into, with any sort of niche community, you'll have a vocal minority of attention-seeking individuals who may very well be correctly self-diagnosing themselves, but also pair that with a toxic tendency to use it to justify their behaviors, or pull the disability card, and lack any drive to improve themselves. Just, oh, now I know what's wrong with me. That's another tool in my holster of toxicity. You'll get those sorts of people, and they're in all sorts of communities, the autistic community, the queer community, all of that. And they give all of them a terrible name because they're also attention seekers who have the loudest voice and will just trash those communities in the eyes of people who don't know any better. You'll get that a lot. And it's important to kind of know how to suss out that kind of person, because they're also present in Reddit and Facebook communities that can be very useful for trying to filter through your experiences and figure out what sort of issues you may or may not be having. You know, if you're reasonably confident that in your self-diagnosis, you can then move on and get an official diagnosis, save up, see someone, or try your best to apply coping mechanisms outside of medication now that you know what sort of things to look for, what to work towards. You know, you don't know that compartmentalization will work if you don't even think that you have ADHD, but once you cross that first barrier, then you can start looking for tools to help manage ADHD or autism. Like, one of my sensory issues is how moist my hands are. Carry moisturizing lotion everywhere, and it's a thing. Like, I hate washing my hands. I hate having dirty hands, but I hate washing my hands because when I wash my hands, it throws off the moisture in my hands, and then I just hate my whole life. There's a lot of like myths and conceptions about neurodivergence and autism. There's a lot of characters in pop culture that can help to really give insight into what life is like with these symptoms. And I say these symptoms, not autism, because autistic symptoms and autistic traits don't all necessarily mean you have autism. People with autism have these traits. Every rectangle, or every square is a rectangle, not every rectangle is a square. One of the most common ones is Rain Man. That is the stereotypical autistic savant. Interestingly, the person that Rain Man is based off of, Tim Peake, is not actually thought of to be autistic. He had a different neurological condition where the two halves of his brain did not have any connections between each other. Very interesting. Definitely recommend looking up Tim Peake's life. It's fascinating. The other very popular thing is the Big Bang Theory, which is Sherlock Holmes, also a autistic archetype, but usually done extremely clunkily. So the two of those are kind of like, no, please no. Moss from the IT Crowd, of course. Captain Holt and Amy from Brooklyn Nine-Nine. And Captain Holt, clearly struggles with social situations and reading people's emotions. Actually, a pretty good depiction of it. Most of the Star Trek has so many autistic adjacent or autism coded characters, and autism coded is like this person's not explicitly stated to be autistic but have enough traits that people with autism can identify them. Spock and Data are two of the common ones, obviously played to extremes, but it's an extreme that can help people understand that particular aspect a little bit better, emotional distance, that sort of thing. Disney's interpretation of The Little Mermaid, not the original fairy tale, but Disney's version of it, is based on a character who was created and played by autistic actress Daryl Hannah. And a lot of Ariel's quirks in the Disney portrayal are actually pretty accurate depictions of autistic special interests and autism adjacent things. Psych, love that show. Psych is autistic traits played for laughs in a non-insulting way, non-demeaning. Both Sean and Gus, just lots of different little things in there. Not necessarily the I'm super observant thing, when I'm playing it off like I'm psychic, but just kind of aspects of their characters are pretty good autistic representations. In the anime world, there's Komi Can't Communicate, which was a huge anime a couple years ago that I never watched, but apparently it's super cute because the main character is an autistic. I don't know if she's officially autistic or not, but she struggles with expressing emotion, expressing herself, talking to people. Things that I struggle with a lot is I will sit there staring at someone, repeating in my head, say this, say this, say this, say this, cannot make the words come out. And then the moment goes, the opportunity is missed, nothing. Makes arguments next to impossible. From what I heard, Komi Can't Communicate gives a very good bit of insight into the struggles with that sort of thing. I've used the word neurodivergent a few times here. The other half of that is neurotypical. And as you can probably gather from those terms, neurotypical and neurodivergent are very context sensitive. It sort of depends on what is considered a typical brain in society at a specific age. So, there could be an alternate universe where autism is the norm and everything else is a neurodivergent brain type. It just happens we live in a society where these brain archetypes are less common, neurotypes. Other neurotypes are ADHD, dyspraxia, dyslexia, dyscalculia, Tourette's, OCD, and others. These are all labels for things that might overlap, might be adjacent, might be combined. That's why autism is considered a spectrum disorder. Splitting autism spectrum disorder down into distinct labels is kind of iffy science because it can get really arbitrary. A spectrum disorder sort of unifies traits and symptoms and into something that generally has an underlying cause or similar symptom profiles and turns it into a range of severity. Where I land on the autism spectrum specifically, 10 years ago would have been known as Asperger's syndrome. That's not really a term that's used anymore for multiple reasons, partly because of the folly of just sectioning out a piece of a spectrum and saying, yes, this is one that we're going to give a label to. And also because of who Hans Asperger was. He was an Austrian pediatrician in the 30s and 40s. And I'm sure you can guess where the rest of the story is. He's considered to be responsible for the deaths of hundreds of children considered unfit for life or unsuitable for life due to their degree of severity on what we now know as the autism spectrum. So we don't like to talk about him very much. It's kind of a dirty word. So that's where that's at. This video is kind of long. I sort of figured if I was going to bring this up, I wanted to bring a healthy dose of education with it and personal experiences. Looking at the demographics, my viewer audience is a little bit older and are probably still familiar with the older terms and haven't really paid any attention to developments in the field since they were in school. So I thought it would be useful to explain some of that, explain where I'm coming from. And maybe some people will identify with some of this and start seeking treatment or looking around to see if they fall into any of the categories mentioned. I don't know if I got this across all that well earlier, but neurodivergence doesn't have to be a handicap. It can be very useful in some certain industries. So if you suspect that you have autism spectrum disorder and you're unhappy at your job, it might give you some guidance on what sorts of jobs to look for next, something that's better suited to the sort of things that make your brain fizz. And then you might find that you excel and your life is far more happier for it. But overall, seeking diagnosis and seeking help is a very personal decision. If you have a normal doctor that you go to, it might be worth bringing up your concerns to them to see if there's someone they can point you to. If you have insurance, you might be able to find someplace in network that is a lot cheaper, and maybe that makes it make financial sense to go get some help or talk to somebody. In the past, there's been a big stigma about getting mental health help being seen as a weakness, but fortunately that stigma is eroding even in typically masculine sort of circles like car enthusiasts. I can say that it feels good to have a concrete answer to questions that I've had for decades now, and hopefully the way forward improves. Hopefully I am able to find something that works. And yeah, I guess I'll see you guys in the next video. Probably going to be i3 related, and I'll have a follow-up video to this to answer questions if anyone has them. And I might get back into doing some video game streaming on Twitch and doing Q&As there, so we'll see. We'll see what's going on, but as always, thanks for watching.